Hello, welcome to the second episode of my podcast. Today I have the honor of introducing Byron Deese. Byron and I have known each other for over 23 years. Byron is an amazing financial guy, consultant, advisor, all things finance. When I started my business 8 years ago, I was just confused as to really the finances and how to run those finances. A good friend of ours named Phil Krosky reached out and said, hey, need to speak to Byron. Byron handles a lot of my stuff. I think he can take you to the next level. Well, today I can honestly say Byron is taking me to the next level and beyond, and we still have more to do. So Byron, introduce yourself.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Byron Deese, founder of the Dreammakers Network and our company, Engage Wealth. And it's just truly exciting always to connect with my brother, brother from another mother at this point. And, you know, it's amazing to have these opportunities to not only kind of grip and grind and friendship, but also talk about business and how everybody's trying to excel and really touch on some of the things that we know are challenges, yes, we're ambitious and we want to build great things for the community, but at the same time, how do we do it successfully? Absolutely. And create wealth and, dare I say, generational wealth, trying to build a business. So happy to be here, excited, looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, sir. So let's get started.
Yes, sir.
Your journey in finance began with a bachelor's degree from Tuskegee University. How did your experiences there shape your career path?
I'll tell you, Tuskegee is a special place. It's one of those places where it's deeply rich in history, and not just Black history, but American history. And it was interesting because, my dad, I didn't have anybody, growing up in Florida, I didn't have anybody who actually attended school at Tuskegee. Most of my folks from Florida, they went to either Florida A&M or some of the other HBCUs or other colleges in Florida. So for me, it was an opportunity to, one, get out of Florida. And then two, my dad's from Georgia, and a lot of the people he looked up to were graduates of Tuskegee. And so it was an opportunity for me to kind of have that connection between where my dad was from in Georgia. But at the same time, when I got there and was able to kind of connect the dots on, from Booker T. Washington to George Washington Carver to Tuskegee Airmen to all of the things that I didn't really know about and now it's part of my DNA, it was a special opportunity. And so and one thing that was important to me was studying finance. I didn't really know actually my sister went to FAM, so they had a really good business school, and she was in the band and all that. But I think I was more attracted to what I'll be able to walk away with from a historical factor at Tuskegee versus what my college degree was going to be in. Okay. So I figured that was on me, but to be able to associate with the historical aspect of it was something that was truly game changing at that time. And then when I look at how it's benefited things over the years, I'm thankful that I made that choice. So it was a huge opportunity then, and it's been a blessing.
Well, you've blessed a lot of people. As a certified exit planning advisor, what key strategies do you recommend for small business owners like myself preparing for retirement? I know for me, you've done a lot of things you talk about are tax purposes, retirement purposes. Initially, we had this aggressive 3-year plan in which we said we want to be here in 3 years so that you can sit back and enjoy the fruits of your labor, or maybe build something else. So what advice do you give?
As a CEPA or Certified Exit Planning Advisor and working with business owners, the first question we ask is, what's the end? What's your end game? So begin with the end in mind. And a lot of people, think about it when you're working with business owners and they have employees and you're providing retirement planning conversations for the employees, but a retirement plan for a business owner is a lot different from a retirement plan for your employees. And so how does a business owner actually sell a business to retire? Or is that the plan? Is the plan maybe to pass it down to family or to pass it down to a key employee? But at some point, there has to be a factor of residual income that could last throughout that person's life. And so that's where the conversation begins. How do we start a business with the end in mind, and to connect the dots between the true objective and passions of that business owner with sound financial management strategies that will help connect the dots between the two. And so that's the message that I share with any business owner. Begin with the end in mind, and not just based on what you may have heard somebody else say, but what do you really want to see happen with this business? And is it the objective of, I want to pass this down to my great grandkids?
Gotcha.
Or is it that you want the wealth that business can create to be passed down to your great grandkids? And so being able to unpack that conversation, have it in a way that feels objective for everybody is really my goal in having conversations like that with business owners.
Okay. And I know we have these conversations a lot because I'm not the easiest person to manage, because I have this impulsive behavior, and I know it's a struggle for me. And I'm thanking you for sticking in there with me, because as time goes, I start to understand more and more what you've been preaching to me from day one to day now. So I appreciate that.
Got it.
Can you share insights into your role as relationship development manager when you were at Glass and Jacobson Wealth Advisors, and now how it influences that client relationships?
Yeah, so Glass Jacobson is a special place, actually. So prior to Glass, I spent about a decade just working in retirement plans, so providing 401k plans, 403b plans, other retirement type plans for business owners, nonprofits, and other employers. And so when I went to Glass, the objective originally was for me to go there and expand that side of the business, to expand their retirement plan business. But what I realized is that in working with business owners, and Glass Jacobson actually is an accounting and tax firm as well, that there are a lot of business owners who, yes, they wanted to have these retirement conversations, but they needed more than just a 401k, right? And so how do we connect the dots between providing a 401k for the employee and the employer, but being able to build something that employers can get excited about? And so my job there was really to bring in our tax, our accounting, our bookkeeping, our investment management, our insurance, all these pieces together to provide a retirement plan offering to business owners. And that's really what we were able to create. And so it was exciting, because if you talk to any business owner, first thing they're going to say is, hey, I listen to what my CPA says. So the CPA usually is, because all business owners are afraid of the tax man, right? So, that is the ongoing truth.
Duly noted. Duly noted.
So, but when then it was important to say, well, let's talk to the CPA. What type of advice is the CPA giving the business owner? And it could be tax compliance, make sure you're, sending in your quarterly estimates, and make sure that you have this going, that. Or it was, I should say, or adding to, hey, you should also think about buying real estate, or you should also think about other things that could provide deductibility and things like that. And that's great. But we realized that the CPA wasn't providing strategic financial planning. And more importantly, retirement planning, estate planning. How does this affect the goals of that business owner? So only a small piece of the puzzle was being satisfied by the CPA. And we needed to build something that the client could really say, okay, I really have a handle on what's going on in all aspects of not only my current financial situation, but strategic and even the generational financial objective. So that was the reason why it was important, and Glass allowed me the opportunity to kind of be very entrepreneurial and build that, and even the back office systems, which in many ways they say, well, we've tried something like this, it's never worked. But being able to be entrepreneurial within a business already was great for me, because we are able to be successful in that venture.
I love it. And I appreciate Glass for allowing you to work with me during that time. Now I want the bigger and better things. As founder, in 2020, you were inducted into the Professional Advisors Recognition Society by the Baltimore County Foundation. What does this recognition mean to you, and how's it influenced your work? Because I know you do a lot of charitable things, and you're really involved with the community, and that means everything to you.
Yeah. So first, I think it's important to know the Baltimore Community Foundation and the work that they do. Any community foundation throughout the country really serves as like the philanthropic hub for that city. And so when you think about Baltimore and all the things and the challenges that the city has in trying to address, well, what hasn't the government provided? What about the business community? How can they get involved? What about all these other people you hear about? The Baltimore Community Foundation is the resource that allows you to kind of pull a lot of those philanthropic, those who have the resources to support the city, and then they in turn go out and find the issues and start funding those and try to address and right a lot of wrongs, if you will. And so the organization's been around for a long time. Every year they bring in a new group of professional advisors to help, one, support those objectives, but two, to gain guidance and access to maybe parts of the Baltimore community that they don't know about. And so, in 2020, I was able to be a part of that group. And in at the same time, was able to join the investment committee for the Baltimore Community Foundation, which not only allows me to serve in that philanthropic hub, but to also support the investment objective for all the folks who are putting money into the foundation to help know that we're managing those dollars in a way that's going to help it to grow, but it's safeguarding those assets to make sure it's not, more so it's in compliance with their investment objective, and more importantly, their charitable objective. So it's really been a very rich and rewarding experience. Actually, since that time, I'm also in the Professional Advisory Society for the Central Florida Foundation, which is the Orlando hub for philanthropic activities. And so it's helped me to kind of branch out and become much more involved in the community from a philanthropic perspective.
And I will say this, you don't just talk about this, you put your clients in situations to be involved with this. Actually, my foundation, the Patricia Ann Matthews Children's Foundation, is also a part of the Baltimore Community Foundation. So I appreciate you for guiding me in that direction.
Yes, sir.
With your extensive experience in providing retirement services and employee benefits for small businesses, what common challenges do you observe and how do you address them?
Well, what's interesting when we think about just retirement planning in and of itself, it's important for employers to be able to offer as an employer benefit to their employees these types of strategies, because if the employer doesn't offer it, then now you're leaving it up to every individual in the workforce to have that type of foresight to know that they should save for retirement. And so think about it. The first time most people have heard about retirement savings came through their employer. So whether it's a 401k or 403b or the old pension style of having a defined benefit plan for them. We know back in the day where our parents and grandparents, say, hey, I'm going to work for Bethlehem Steel. And I started right out of high school. And that company gave me a pension. I worked there for 40 years and I had income for the rest of my life. Well, we know that doesn't, first of all, Bethlehem Steel is not here anymore. And on top of that, most companies, actually, unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but there was a portion of my career where I actually helped companies to close their defined benefit pension plans, which means it's guaranteed income. You don't have to participate in the 401k plan. The company provides the retirement. So under this defined contribution world of 401ks, 403bs.
Are y'all listening to this?
This is the way it's the special role that employers play in helping to advance and make sure, because think about it, if the employer doesn't provide some form of offering as an employee benefit, then it's left up to either one of the two things. Either an individual is going to figure out, I need an IRA, I need to invest in stocks or whatever, or it's left on the government to try to support these folks who never saved, and so we have to look at everyone's role in all of this. So that's why working with employers has been more of a passion for mine, because I know they have access to the people who really need these services. And we recognize that the government every day is trying to figure out how to reduce what they're going to offer to retirees and Social Security and things like that. So we have to be very proactive to try to fill the gap and work with as many business owners as possible to make sure they really recognize how important it is to provide these types of employee-sponsored services to the employees.
It's major.
It's major.
So as the founder of the Dream Makers Network, what inspired you to create this professional networking group, and what's its primary objectives?
That's a great question. And so just to kind of give you a little background on the Dream Makers. So I used to live in Philadelphia and was working for Lincoln Financial Group. During that time, this was also during the time of Senator Obama was running for office.
Okay.
And so we were quote unquote young professionals at that time, 20s, folks who were newly out of college, but there was a big demographic of young, Black, recently graduated folks, and it was a presidential election. We got this brother out here running for president. So I started a group called Dream Makers for Obama. And that was an opportunity to partner with the campaign, with Senator Obama's campaign at the time, to help increase the youth vote, the Black vote, and everything else. So we were going from, and Pennsylvania's a swing state, right? So we were there. We were going to areas that had low voter turnout, and getting out and helping to increase that part. In most cases, this was, predominantly Black, low-income communities who had less than a 5% voter turnout in that community. So we put together Dream Makers for Obama to do just that. Now, I would say the most powerful part of that was what we saw and who we met during that period. We met people who were recently out of prison. We met, folks who were retired but didn't have enough money to keep them throughout, and how are they going to pay for just the bills? Mm-hmm. We met folks who were young people who didn't graduate from college or some of them high school, and they were trying to figure out. So it was an opportunity to really think about what are the opportunities for this demographic. And now we better understand why voter turnout was low, because there's a lot of apathy there. And from the standpoint of what's in it for me. And so that's where the Dream Makers Network was created.
Okay.
As an opportunity to, one, go to the markets that don't have a voice, if you will, and try to begin the process of providing resources and connect the dots. And so the goal is to attract as many professionals. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? What do you need? And how can we provide those services and outreach through this network? It's morphed over the past 12 years at this point to an organization that is providing professional services for people who need those services. Again, from tax services to legal services to even work with public officials, and connecting the dots with folks who may be in that region who could directly support that small business or that entrepreneur or that teacher or whatever the case may be, and making sure that folks who have ideas don't give up on those ideas because they don't think they have a network. They don't think they have a support system. We want to make sure that we know what it is that folks are doing, and then how we can collectively say, we want to see you win, let's get behind you, let's support that. And so, and we've been doing this throughout the country for, since those years, back in Obama years, but more in a more organized way over the past 12 years.
Gotcha. And this is deep. And I just want to say, normally, when I have these conversations, it's with people I know and friends, and there's a lot of banter back and forth. But I think it's really important that I allow you just to speak, because what you're giving is something that a lot of us in our communities don't understand, which is financial literacy. I grew up in a situation where, I didn't understand paying bills on time. My mother took care of those things. So there's a lot of insight that I didn't have. And I was financially irresponsible for probably 75% of my life. Literally, up until I met you, I literally was financially irresponsible. My credit was horrible. Spending habits were beyond belief. And the understanding that I got from our conversation and our network of people that we deal with who have a better understanding of finances has just really enlightened me. So I may not do a lot of banter, but it's only because I need everyone to hear what you have to say without me interrupting, because what you're saying affects the lives, affects the mental health of people in general, and especially people of color, So,
and it's not like we learned this stuff in school. And as you mentioned earlier, we learned a lot of the things that we do today from our parents. So if our parents were good at it, then we're more likely going to be good at it. If they weren't good at it, we're probably not going to be good at it either. So, and that's kind of how we got to this point. And what's interesting, and it's just important point to actually make, how I actually got in finance, period. I remember watching the news. Me and my mom used to watch the news, and we watched Tom Brokaw. And I remember in 1987, which was what we now know as Black Monday.
Okay.
We're watching the news and we're watching Tom Brokaw talk about the stock market crashing, and people were jumping out of buildings and committing suicide. I'm like, what is going on? I'm watching this, as a young guy, and I asked my mom, I was like, why aren't we so upset about this? Like, she was like, because we didn't have any money in the stock market. So she's like, we didn't
lose everything. We didn't lose everything.
We didn't have anything to lose. And so, but what it did was that her response helped me understand that there are levels to all of this stuff. But it did spark curiosity as to, okay, what is this stock market thing? And how are people creating wealth using it? And I'm looking outside my window. I don't see any of my neighbors
jumping off the rooftop.
No one else is going crazy about this. So how come we didn't get that information in our neighborhood here? So that started the whole journey. And I'll give it to my mom. She was an educator, and she was actually one of the advisors at her high school for the Future Business Leaders of America. And so I joined Future Business Leaders of America. Still, as just kind of 10 years removed from that, and I'm thinking in my mind, I remember back in '87, when this stock market crash thing happened, helped me understand. And so that was what really made me want to major in finance.
Gotcha.
And at Future Business Leaders of America, we did competitions and all these different things, and gave me a chance to compete and start that journey of learning. I ended up becoming national treasurer of that organization in college. And so it sparked something way back in the 80s that has led all the way up to creating Engaged Wealth to provide these kind of services. So the next stock market, at least we can have some folks who are on the winning side.
But then we might be jumping out the window because we understand the stock market a little bit. So I'm with you.
Right.
Got you.
That's right.
Got you. All right, perfect. So how do you stay current with evolving financial regulations and ensure your clients benefit from the latest industry developments?
Yeah.
Because it's ever changing. Like, the laws, the rules. We have someone in office now who is really going to shake things up, so he says.
Yeah.
So how do you stay on top of all that?
Yeah. Taking as much information as possible. I mean, I think that's the wild part. I guess if this was 30 years ago, I would say I read a lot of newspapers. Now I read the digital newspapers, and the information is coming nonstop. Whether it be information just on business in and of itself, whether it be daily feeds on stocks and those public offerings and the information coming that way. A big part of the work that I do, though, is legislative. And so working with muni, state, and federal legislators to not only hear about what's coming down the pipe, but also how to help influence their thinking around legislation as well, especially for my clients, my industry, because, when you have clients who are trying to make major moves, particularly in business, and 70% of my clients are African-American business owners. We have as you mentioned, we have a new president coming in. And he and his team have been pretty much hell-bent on ending all things that smells like affirmative action. And when we think about federal contracts and state contracts that are minority business enterprise and 8A procurement opportunities for Black business owners.
When you say 8A procurement,
tell people what you mean. Yeah, 8A procurement for the federal government is basically a quote-unquote set-aside of all the various services that the federal government offers. Who are they contracting with to actually provide those services? And whatever your brain can think of, the government has a general service division that says we're going to do contracts with a company to help us provide that. Because if you don't contract with companies, then the federal government has to do that, and that's just increasing, the overall spending in the government. So they say, okay, let's contract with businesses to do this work. Well, 8A is that minority business federal contracting set aside. But again, when you have folks who are actually creating lawsuits on anything that smells like affirmative action to say, oh, you got that contract because you're Black, and I think that's against my constitutional right to say it's only for Black people, that is what we're up against right now. And, we're here in Maryland, and Maryland, Prince George's County, Charles County, all these, there's a lot of Black wealth in this state. in many ways came through government contracting, particularly AA contracting, with the government. And so, when we're thinking about how to create wealth, you create wealth by having access to contracts, access to capital, access to customers. And for Black folks, that comes through procurement. That comes from those types of opportunities. And so, we have to stay, advocates on these topics, working with legislators so they can know what's going on. How are these decisions and legislative policies affecting the bottom line of Black economics? And so these are things that at the top of my brain, scoping and watching every day, listening to what people are saying and who's influencing them, who are our friends. We can't just, as Black folks, we're thinking about this from an economic perspective. We can't just sit back and wait to see what, NBC or Fox says about politics.
Yes.
We have to know the difference between who are our friends in the Democratic Party, who are our friends in the Republican Party, and how do we navigate those relationships to advance the Black economic objective. And so these are things that I can't sit back and be reactive, if you will.
Gotcha.
Okay, I think we're in a good situation now. No, we have to be proactive and say, this is what the issues are for our people. If you want our support, this is how we need you to help support our agenda.
And I know you and I have spoken about this before, that the importance of now more than ever investing in ourselves, not looking for the handouts per se, but understanding that hand up does matter. But at the same time, investing in our Black banks, investing in our Black grocery stores, investing in our Black supermarkets, investing in Black artists, investing in things that support our culture and what we see and do on a daily basis. Because nobody's gonna look out and say, hey, we gotta make sure they're okay. Those days are gone for the next 4 years. Now it's about, we have to do what's best for our people and not just my own wealth. Because if I'm creating wealth, then I have to spread that wealth and help those because I'm fortunate, I'm blessed. And that's one of the things I appreciate about your teaching and you're showing me and guiding me in this financial realm that I'm in is that, hey, we're gonna have to do things to help others. We're not gonna keep it for ourselves, but you wanna uplift others with what you do, the programs you do, and teaching and educating the children the children I work with. I go back to a time when I really didn't understand finance, but I understood that I didn't understand finance.
Got it.
And in doing that with my children, I think my children may have been 11 or 12 years old. And I realized that I pay bills every day. My kids don't understand what that's about. As a child, I didn't understand what that was about. And it hampered me. It made my life more difficult. So I started giving allowances. And with allowances, what I would do is I would give my kids $100 a week.
Okay.
Which was a lot.
Allowance.
Which was a lot.
Make sure my daughter's not listening to this.
But when you break it down, that $100, that's my paycheck. Well, that's not my paycheck. That's what I get before taxes. So my kids had to learn you got to pay rent. In their case, for me, it was mortgage. You got car payments, you got gas, you got groceries, you have your cable bill, you have your cell phone bills. You have all these bills, so that $100 that I got, it's $20 now. So at the end of the week, how much do you keep? How much do I bring home? So at the end of the week, they would get $20. So that $80 that was left over, there used to be a website called sharebuilders.com. Where you get stock at low cost, penny stock, that type of thing. So we would always go there on Saturday mornings and they would have to look at the different stock to see what they can invest that $80 in. Because I got to teach them financial responsibility.
Got it.
And I think that's something I try to incorporate with my program with the kids I work with, because for a lot of foster children, everything is given. And they become dependent. And then at 21, they say, you can no longer be dependent on us. You got to go out into this big world of ours and figure it out. Well, I'd rather them have an advantage in figuring it out by understanding bills, understanding that there's a cost for everything. So we try to put a financial component in our program for that purpose. And that's something that as we move forward, I'm going to have you involved
Yeah,
because
yeah, man.
who better than the person who guides my finances
Yeah.
to teach the next generation about finances?
I remember the great Jim Rohn, who was a personal development coach and the whole nine and wrote a lot of really good books. He talked about finance 101 and the question being, or more so the statement of, poor people spend their money and save what's left. Rich people invest their money and spend what's left.
Say it again. Look at the camera and say that, please.
Yes. So the philosophy of the rich and poor by Jim Rohn is that poor people spend their money and invest what's left, and rich people invest their money and spend what's left. It's the same money. You're talking about $1. How much of that dollar goes to saving and investing versus spending? And it's just what to do with the dollar. That's the conversation. And so we can get into kind of just the 101 of that. That's kind of more simple, elementary version of that of, assets and liabilities. But then as you get, the conversation does change, which is why I do support entrepreneurs, because as you move from the employee quadrant to the employer quadrant, things change. The tax code changes. And so with the tax code, there are things that used to be an expense over here that now can easily become a tax deductible expense, which now goes back to your bottom line. So it's important for us to have these conversations. And actually, I mentioned the word quadrant. I recommend, there's a book called The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, same person who wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
But the Cash Flow Quadrant talks about the 4 quadrants of how you can earn income. And you have the E quadrant as an employee, W-2, the S quadrant as your self-employed business owner, the B quadrant as a business owner with employees, and then the I quadrant as that person who's that business owner who sold his business and is now an investor. And more than likely, he's investing in things that's similar to the business that he sold. So ESBI, how do you receive income? And you can receive it in all different types, and I use that same quadrant as a way to look at diversification. So you can say, well, that B quadrant is where I expect to get the highest rate of return out of all the other quadrants. So if I'm growing my business at a clip that's faster than maybe my 401k can grow. So my B quadrant is my aggressive, my 401k is my moderate. You have some bank money, you have some money that's in the fixed guaranteed, so you kind of diversify where your assets are, and you have an understanding as to what the expected growth rate is per quadrant. So it's important for us to at least have some type of specific investment policy around our own money. Number one, where's the money coming from? I made this money because, I have a business that's making money for me, or I have real estate and it's producing money for me, or I have in stocks, or whatever the case may be, or I have a little side thing that I do and I make a little money on that too. That's now building your investment policy. You know where your money's coming from. Then the question is, now I know where the money's coming from. What do I do with that money once I get it? Where am I investing it, or is it all being spent? And for people who say, well, it's all being spent, but I love the things that it buys. Okay, that's cool.
Are you talking about me right now? You talking about me right now? That's what you talking about right now.
People in general, there is value to things that you spend. And it's important to even know, like, I spend my money on these things. Oh, great. Well, what does that do for you? Oh, let me tell you about it. And for people who can go in there and unpack and say, hey, this is what it does for me, I'm so excited. That is quality of life, right? So I said, okay, it's clear to me that you're going to continue to spend. There's no need for me to try to create a budget. It's clear. That's where you're going to do that. So let's at least look for some, if you like vacation in Dubai, then let's find some real estate out there. And next time you go to your place. And when you're not there, you rent it out to other people who are kind of Airbnb and out there, and they like going there too. Let's at least create some economy in the things that you love to do. You say, okay, well, I'm game for that. So we're still working on how do we identify the investment policy. Where do you receive your money? And 2, what does it go to? And is it growing, or is it going out the door? So that's kind of when you think about just kind of the methodology of providing an investment policy for clients, it's not cookie cutter. It's very specific to that person and their needs.
And I hope people are really hearing what you're saying, because I hear a lot of times people say, well, I don't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And when you say I don't make a lot of money, but yet you go spend your money on things that aren't making you money and things that are a desire or a want and not a need, I kind of, because I was guilty of that. I still might be guilty of that. But I also understand in my thinking now is that in a way it cripples me, because I make an excuse to spend something that I would, like you said earlier, that I really want to get, but I don't need it. And I can afford it, but I don't need it. And it's not making that long-term picture come any closer. It just means I'm extending the amount of time it's going to take for me to get to point A to point B, because I have to have this item that is a want and a desire that doesn't necessarily enhance my long-term future.
Well, I think it's important. There's a word that we all should use, and that's intrinsic value. You know, it may not be valuable to me. I may not see the rate of return growth on that, but you do. When you're there, your spirits are higher, your energies are, heightened, the whole nine. And that's adding years to your life, or at least more quality years to your life. So intrinsic value has to be in everybody's investment policy, right? And so if that's the case, then you look at, okay, well, even going back to a conversation that we had before around, well, you know what? I think I'm going to cut this part of the business, which, makes up about 15% of our spending, and I'll put that back in my pocket. I was like, okay, that's one way. It's one thing to do. Or you could take that 15% and put it to another part of the portfolio that needs some capital. So if that means we take that 15% from the day-to-day business, the operational business, and move that over to, the real estate space, and if you have some real estate that's in your favorite locations to vacation, that just increases your, value of life, if you will, while you're still making money, right? So we're just looking at where everything is, and we have to do a cost-benefit analysis on all this stuff, because there may be some things that you're doing right now that you say, you know what, man, I think you get a better investment clip in a different part of the quadrant, and just be okay with the fact that or I should say, just recognize that you're losing money here. So how long should we stay here? Because, and with some of the other things that you have going on in your portfolio, that if it had a little bit more capital, you could make more money, then you can come back and say, thank you for that financial advice, but I love what's happening over here, man. I know I might be losing a little money, but can you at least just help me find some deductible expenses, because I love what I'm doing, and I know I'm losing. So again, going back to intrinsic value and why it's important for intrinsic value to be a part of the investment policy.
Okay, perfect. Love it, love it. Now, I know this one means a lot to you, because we talked about this the other day, and it's really where you're heading in your next phase. It says, could you discuss your approach to integrating life insurance into financial planning and entrepreneurs, especially in securing business loans and ensuring business continuity?
Yeah, I think it's important, especially when we're talking to business owners. That's why cookie cutter financial advice is not recommended. Water cooler financial advice is not recommended, because somebody who's, an employee and somebody who's an employer having financial planning conversation, it's like swords going against each other, because it's not the same strategy. So I say that to say, if you are a business owner and your main objective is to grow your business, then it's important for the other parts of that portfolio to have some protections, to have a reduced risk of loss, because you're pumping your time and energy into building and growing your business. And unfortunately, what we've seen, especially when we talk about investments, that even when we look at modern portfolio theory, which is basically the model for diversification, to say don't put all your eggs in one basket, and say, oh, you need to have a certain percentage in aggressive, high growth, a certain percentage in moderate, a certain percentage in fixed income, a certain percentage in liquidity. It's important to recognize that in most of those conversations, guarantees like cash value life insurance and things like that, and even accumulation annuities and things like that, aren't included in the conversation. And so I think it's important to make sure that, yes, we have a diversified portfolio, but we make sure that life insurance and educating on the various types of life insurance, that it plays an active role in somebody, especially a business person's portfolio. And why is that important? Because in business, you're trying to grow your business, and then there comes a certain time when you need leverage. You need to either go to the bank and get a loan, or you need an investor to come in and invest in your business. Maybe you free up some shares to bring in, limited partners into the business. But you need some type of capital to help take it to the next level. And life insurance, and especially cash value life insurance, can serve as another asset that can be leveraged upon for collateral, or even if you're not going, you can just create your own bank, through cash value life insurance. You can take a loan from your policy and fund that next project, or hire another employee, somebody who's going to create that growth and things like that. So it's an important piece of the puzzle. And I would say a big part of what we do on the employee benefit side is working with partners and firms and owners, and making sure they have cash value life insurance policy on each other. Because if one person, it's not just about somebody dies. What people know is, this person's passed away. How are we going to pay out his shares? Do we need to go get a loan? Do we have that money in the bank or in the business? That kind of thing. Or you can have a policy that pays when that person dies. But that's just a term policy. But if you have a cash value policy like an index universal life, or universal life, or a variable universal life, that you can say, okay, I'm going to take a loan from this policy, buy out the family's shares, or that person can still be alive. He's ready to get out the business. And it's like, and I want to do other things, but I need you guys to buy me out. There's another way. Instead of you having to go raise capital to buy the person out, you can just take a loan from the policy, buy them out. Now those shares come back into the business, or whoever, either the company bought it out or that other partner bought the shares, and they become now 100% owner, or those shares stay in the business. So it gives you leverage to do so many different things that you don't have without those types of life insurance strategies.
Wow. I love it. I'm learning. And I appreciate you for that. Final question. Reflecting on your career, what advice would you offer to aspiring financial advisors aiming to make a meaningful impact in their clients' lives and communities?
Yeah.
And I know communities are really, really big for you.
Yeah, one thing I didn't mention is that, I'm the son of preachers and teachers. I did mention my mom was an educator, my dad was a pastor, my granddad was a pastor, aunts and uncles are teachers and ministers. So there is a big community factor here that, how to help people get from where they are to where they're trying to go. And when we look at people who are coming into, especially in the Black community, this is a big trust factor in the Black community where, you've had so many, quote unquote, salespeople who come in and just sold a lot of products that may not have been in the best interest of people. And so they didn't move and present themselves as advisors. And then also when it comes to, just working class and middle class communities, they may not have a lot of the extra dollars to quote unquote invest. So a lot of the financial service people and financial advisors, investment advisors, don't show up in the working class and middle class communities because there's no money for them to make money there. They have to follow the people who have the resources. And so if you really want to make a difference, it's important. One thing that's really at the top of my brain now, and now building the business and bringing on more advisors into the business, is to be creative and understand how you can still do well and to create wealth for yourself in this type of work. But at the same time, find ways to fill gaps, and work with as many people as you can, offer multiple services. Some revenue streams may not grow as fast as others, but it's still a revenue stream. So you have to have a part of your revenue stream that are the big wins. Wow, we closed one case and it took care of our whole year. That should be in your business development strategy. You also should have those that, the small life insurance policies that somebody who and love or just doesn't have any coverage. And it's more of an estate planning strategy for that family. Making sure you're doing enough of that too, because if all these things are needs of people. the big stuff and the small stuff. So just have a diversified revenue stream that can benefit one way or the other.
How do you deal with your own mental health as far as you're a father, you're a husband, you were an employee, and now you're an employer.
Yeah.
And things have heightened because you're really taking your life to the next level. And as a business owner, I know what that mental health piece gets into, and how it can suck the love that you have for something away. Because it becomes overwhelming if you're not prepared and don't know how to deal with that. So for yourself, how will you, what do you do to decrease the stresses on your everyday life?
It's great question. I say it's important to spend time doing the things you enjoy, you know, and whatever those things are, you know, as long as it's not tearing up your health or whatever. But, you know, for me, I'm a big music guy. And so, you know, in all types of different types of music, spending as much time doing those types of things, whether it be going to concerts or listening to certain types of music as often as I can, whether it be in the car or just making an opportunity to go and get that interest. Just past week or a couple, last week we went to see the Black Nativity at Center Stage. And it was just to see the diversity of voices and people and the arts. I'm really big into arts. You know, my daughter's in performing arts. I was in performing arts as a kid. You know, so making sure that
you went to band camp.
I wasn't in band camp. I was a choir kid. I was a choir kid, and I was one of the kids. I played football, and so I would go and recruit other football players to come and learn how to sing, you know, join the choir. And so I ain't joining the choir. I was like, there's a lot of girls in there. It's like, oh, okay, come check it out then, you know. But just to add that, you know, kind of complexity to a young person's life. And I like spending time with young people.
Okay.
I'm the president of the PTA at my daughter's school, and spending the time, you know, just in mentoring young people. Middle school was a tough time for me. There was a lot of changes that were going on, and I could have easily gone the other way. But I see those kids, especially those young men who are thinking about all the changes that are happening, voice changes, height, you know, maybe it might be issues in the family, and trying to make sense of all of that. So engaging with them is something that is a big stress reliever.
Therapeutic.
It's therapeutic
for you.
Yeah, it's therapeutic. And
for sure.
It gives me an opportunity to not, you know, talk about finance and stuff as much, but get into the life of somebody who you know is growing and developing. That, you know, I can look back 30 years, 30, 40 years and say, that was me. And I see where you are. Let me tell you a little bit about what was going on with me at that time. And then, what? For real? It's like, and I was the same age as you. And here's what changed. And this is a good time to maybe start thinking about how to diversify your time to maybe begin to move away from some of the things that may be sending you in the wrong direction. And so spending time with them is therapeutic for me. And, you know, try to do that as much as I can.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit with me and discuss these things. For those who are watching, I hope you really listened. I know a lot of us, people of color, when we hear numbers, tend to start to block things out because it's not a part of our normal day. I want this to be a part of our normal day. Because it takes the mental health stress away from you when you understand your finances, when you understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, and most of all, why you're doing it. The big picture is the children that you have and setting up a legacy for them to continue on what you've given them. Byron, I appreciate everything you've done for me. I appreciate everything you've done for my family. I appreciate what you're doing for our community. And I know how big the community is, everything to you, and everything that you talk about is putting back into the community. So I would like you to let everybody out there know how they can reach you, because I'm sure you better reach out to Byron if you need support or you need guidance, tax issues, financial issues, insurance issues, whatever it is, Byron's agency will cover that. So let everybody know how to reach out to Byron Deese.
Yeah, please go to and check us out at Dreammakers Network. Go to dreammakersnetwork.org, dreammakersnetwork.org, and that's an opportunity where you can go and schedule time, get on the calendar, have a conversation just about whatever you're working on. You know, whether it be you want to start a business or you want to become more charitable, or you know you're just looking for some financial concerns. Definitely go to dreammakersnetwork.org to schedule time. Just learn more, see the things that we're doing in the community. You can go to our website for Engage Wealth at www.engage-wealth.com. If you know exactly what you're looking for and you have some retirement planning goals and you're really ready to sit down and go through that, definitely check us out at engage-wealth.com and schedule time, and we look forward to having an opportunity to connect with you.
Thank you, Byron. Much love.
Sir. All right. Boom.